Hi everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and together we are ThinkerThemer, and I'm so excited because we're finally here. The top small box family games of 2024.
The most wonderful time of the year, some would say.
It's been a great year for this style of game. Now, what constitutes a small box family style game? Not necessarily party games.
No, there might be some party games in the mix, but well, it's small box, so that's the first category, I think.
Some of them are not too small.
No, some of them are like medium, and some of them are even large box, but like a lighter experience.
A lighter experience, that's it. So games that bring gamers and non-gamers together, or games that you can use to hopefully upskill your friends to get them more into the hobby.
Level them up.
Yeah, they're the gateway games. So those are the types of games that are on this list. We'll do a separate list for our heavy games Euros of the year, which will be a little bit later. But this, like I said, this year has been a great year for light games, so I'm excited to get into it. So let's get into our top 10.
So starting with my number 10, which is the game Cities, which is all about constructing your own lovely 3D little city by having these rounds of drafting elements from a kind of central market. So you're going to be drafting the actual tiles that are going to become that sort of 3x3, I believe, and they kind of dictate the different types of terrain. Then you're also going to be drafting buildings, which are going to be the sort of what do you call it? Like you can kind of put them one on top of the other, and so you can build multiple levels of different colors representing different types of construction, and they all have requirements of where they kind of need to go. You're also going to be drafting the goals, or what's going to be scoring the most for you, and then also different types of features that will go either in the water or in like the parks and different areas. So it's a really interesting, very simple, because at every turn it's just very, very simple, but then it's all in the combos that you're making, and then obviously there's also some race objectives as well. So
and those race objectives are what really bring in the theme of the cities, because they all represent a different city. So it might be Mexico City, or it could be Sydney, and then those scoring conditions demand different features that kind of represent that city. Like I love that the Sydney city is all about waterfront properties. So you're trying to build out an abstract approximation of what that city would look like. This game is really interesting because we had it in a 10 out of 10, and I didn't rate it. So it was somewhere in the sevens, low sevens, and it wasn't a game that I necessarily was like, oh, this is perfect for me, because it was a little bit light. But what I've found with this game is I keep on coming back to it to teach it to people, because it's so accessible. And the other thing I really like about the mechanics is that you can only draft from one of the rows of items once per round, and so the order in which you do that is very important, and it means you have to kind of keep an eye on what other players around the table want, because you're like, if I don't take that now, Maggie could also use that scoring condition, or she might notice that I need it and hate draft it away from me. So, I better go and grab that before I do other things. So I really like that dynamic of the game. It just didn't make my top 10, and, I was a bit surprised by, how much we've been playing it.
Well, it's just very accessible, very easy, and very satisfying. Just a very simple experience. We don't have the box, because this is going to happen a couple of times for the games in this list. You end up loaning them to people and going, borrow this.
I keep them at work as well, because it's the type of game where you just can easily, want to play cities, let's go.
So that's my number 10, Cities.
Now, my number 10 is an interesting one. My number 10 is Middle Ages by Marc-Andre. Now, Marc-Andre, in case you don't know, is the designer of Splendor, which of course is like a game that gets a lot of people into the hobby, and it's, sold a lot of copies. Now, Marc-Andre had another game a while ago, which was called Majesty for the Realm. Now, Middle Ages is a re-implementation of that game that's, they've done a good job of bringing it back, honestly. But the problem with Majesty for the Realm is that you can't get it anywhere. And so the reason why Middle Ages is number 10 on my list is because it's bringing it back. It's bringing back this game. And what is this game? Well, you are drafting tiles. So in the original game, it was cards, but now it's these beautiful tiles. And you're going to be using your little Lord Meeple to place it out on the tile you want. And there's different rows of tiles. So you're going to start with the first row. Everyone's going to place their Lord. And then we're going to collect the tiles back in the order in which our Lords are placed from left to right. So the person who chose the leftmost tile will get to take it and place it into their tableau first. And why does that matter? Because all of the tiles have some kind of action or power that's associated with them, and some of those have quite interactive things that are going to happen. For example, if you've got more windmills than everybody else, well, people have to pay you money. And so it's important the order in which you draft, because at that point in time, I may have more windmills than Maggie, even though Maggie is going to draft a windmill later in that same draft. So that's what makes this game interesting. The other thing is you're going to collect income as you go for having different types of tiles. So you're trying to generate a lot of money in this game, because at the end of the game, money is your victory points. And it's just a really interesting game, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to also get at least one of every type of tile. You're watching what you can, go and attack other people if they don't have enough defense. But it really is that engine building element of this game that is truly satisfying, because, and I have to say, this production is particularly gorgeous because when you draft a tile, it clicks in perfectly.
It's pretty satisfying. The way it fits in, the cardboard the cutout just matches.
Yeah,
and if you try and put it in the wrong one, it just won't sit there. So it's like, oh, that's right, it goes here.
Yeah, so it helps you know at what part of your tableau it clicks into. So it is really beautiful, top marks for production quality. And we did a comparison video between this and Majesty for the Realm, where Majesty for the Realm kind of just was ahead of Middle Ages because of its quirkiness. I think they've tightened up a lot of things with Middle Ages, but my main reason for putting it on this list is, again, it's just making it more accessible. Now more people can get their hands on this great game. So my number 10 is Middle Ages.
My number 9 is a game called Harvest. So this is a gorgeous little farming game. This is my own kind of. This is the cozy corner.
Very cozy. Yes. Maggie always has cozy games.
There's always going to be some cozy titles in my list. So this is a re-implementation of an older game, which I believe was also called Harvest.
Well, is it?
Yeah,
I didn't even know that.
Yes, but my understanding is that it's not just like a what do you call it, like reskin or just touch up. They actually did tighten up in some of the rules. So it's actually more than just, there was further development. So it's actually a really nice, accessible worker placement type game where we're all taking the role of these different animals who are farmers. And so we're going to be taking our wheelbarrows, which are like our workers, into different areas of the town, into the farmer's market, getting crops, growing crops, developing crops, and then obviously harvesting those. In the meantime, we're obviously going to have to clear up some of the space in our sort of farm and terrain. That's going to generate other buildings that we could potentially construct as well to give us points or more than points, different abilities along the way. So it's just one of those really charming productions that as you're playing, it's just really nice and sort of satisfying.
It is very relaxing, maybe a little too relaxing for me, which is why it's not on this list, but I really enjoyed the almost polyomino tile placement of your different crops into plots and how you have to manage your plot from a space perspective. So I really enjoyed that about it. Also, the production value is gorgeous, and we don't even have the deluxe edition, and there's like a mat and all this other stuff that you can get for it. But if you do like that, like slower pacing, you're trying to maybe teach people about worker placement, it's definitely a good place to start.
Yeah, very accessible. So that's my number 9, Harvest.
Okay, so my number 9 is the spiritual successor, is what I always say, to the crew, and this is the gang. So the crew was, the first time where people got really excited about cooperative trick-taking, because trick-taking is usually so competitive, whereas the gang, is cooperative poker. Cooperative poker is almost even stranger, I would imagine, for people to, think about, because poker is such a competitive game. But in this game, what you and your friends are trying to do is you're trying to rank your hand of cards relative to each other in terms of its poker strength. And so the only reason you can win a round is if you perfectly rank everybody's hand, but of course you can't see other people's hand of cards, and this game has limited communication. Now what's really interesting is you're still going to reveal cards like Poker Star to the River and all of that, but as each new card is revealed, all players are going to take a token that says how powerful they think their hand is. So for example, we might have tokens out in the center which have 1, 2, 3, and 4 stars. And if I think I've got a really strong hand, I'm going to quickly grab that 1 and put it in front of me to indicate that, hey, I'm pretty sure I will have the highest ranking hand at the end of this game. Now, if someone disagrees with me, they can't say anything. All they do is take that token. And then we have this like stare off of,
no, I'm going to take it back.
No, I'm going to take it back from you. And then they take it back again. You're like, well, you better have a great hand. Otherwise, you have messed this up. Fine, I'll take number 2. And we keep swapping those tokens until we all agree that, okay, now we've got the 1, 2, 3, 4 out there. And then another card is revealed. And then we're going to do that again with a new set of tokens. And what's interesting is that as new cards get added, of course, you could have been thinking, okay, I've got this hand that is lining up to be a straight. And so I'm constantly taking like that high, one of the higher tokens. And then a card is revealed that means I can no longer do that. And so now instead of taking the 1 or 2, I'm taking the 4 straight away. Like now I have a dud hand. And what's interesting is if you know poker well, you can deduce what you think people had.
It's like, oh, they were going for this one, and obviously they missed it. Or
exactly. So you can kind of work out, okay, I understand what they have now, and yes, they're probably right that is going to be the worst hand. And so it's kind of in reading the body language and the energy of people, which if you think about poker, it's the same. You're trying to read the body language of whether someone's a little bit excited because they have a good hand. And it's kind of the same in the way that you're grabbing the tokens. Now, the theme is a bit light. We're trying to rob a bank or something, and there are vaults that we need to open, but essentially you're trying to not set the alarm off, which is when you lose a round.
That was not a match.
You're not here for the theme, and it's not on Maggie's list, put it that way. But it's a really clever game, and I just think that for people who like poker, that's my caveat for this game.
Yeah.
If you have family members who love poker and they always play poker, this is going to be super interesting to them because it's going to, it relies on poker knowledge and it needs to leverage it for the deduction element. If your friends have never played poker in their lives, they're not going to know what's going on.
Or if you
and
have
as a mixed group, it does not work well. So people who really know poker and people who have no idea, that doesn't work well either. And it leads to a lot of like, how could you think that was the highest ranked hand and that kind of thing. They do give you a little cheat sheet that shows you the ranking, but it doesn't really tell you much about like the incidence of that happening. What are the odds of that happening? So people might think that something that's in the middle of the rung is not very good, but actually, sort of
it's like, no, if you hit that is
if
like
you've got a full house,
yeah.
that's pretty good. So so I've been in situations where it's gotten a little bit tense over this game. But if you love poker, check out The Gang, which is my number 9.
Okay, my number 8 is a super cute game.
So cute.
Called Dragon Keepers, where we're going to be, dragon keeping. We're going to be tending to all these different adorable and some of them hipstery looking dragons.
I like the green one because he's very derpy looking. He's really cute.
So
also the designer Michael, he did all of the illustrations for it as
really
well.
Cool.
Multi-talented.
So talented. So in this game, it's a really kind of interesting and unique type game mechanically speaking, because you have these 2 decks of kind of dragons, and some of the decks, like they'll have a number and some of them will have like the color essentially of the dragon. And ultimately what you're going to be trying to do is you're trying to collect cards so that then as the numbers that are being displayed, so for example if it's like a 3 green, so it's almost like the offer at the moment is who can play down 3 green dragons. So you're trying to kind of collect dragons of the same color, like multiple dragons of the same color, because usually when you hit that those particular set levels, you're going to be getting rewards. And obviously the higher the number, the better the rewards are going to be. The interesting thing about this is you can essentially spend some of the cards from your hand to manipulate either the color or the number that's on that display. And on top of that, so say if it's my turn, go, yep, I'm happy with that 3 dragons. Not only do I get to play those 3 green dragons, I should say, everyone else in the table gets a chance to go, yeah, I also can put down my sort of 3 dragons. So everyone's going to be creating their own little sets in front of them. The other interesting thing about this is when you have their first 2 colors, you're fine. But as soon as you add a third color, if any one of your dragon colors is locked, meaning it's got a card on its left or a card on its right, they're sort of
Pieces
falling over,
out.
then you can no longer add dragons to that pile. So it sort of makes for this like, when do I commit?
Point. Yeah, there's a turning point at which you have to give up on ever scoring certain colored dragons again.
Yeah, so it's like all my scoring for the white dragons is done if I now commit to this sort of third color. And then even more so when you commit to the fourth color, the two middle ones are going to be locked in. So it's a really interesting, it's simple in terms of the things that you have available to do, but the choices, and I just found it so fascinating. And also even like the cards that you're getting and going, wait a second, so this card I would be able to use to manipulate, to shift it to this number. So I thought it was a really interesting production.
I also really like the scoring. So you're building these amulets, and what's interesting is that throughout the course of the game, they get more and more valuable. And so if you're doing a lot of quick scoring at the beginning, actually it's not worth that much. And then there's things that you can do later in the game. But if you go earlier, you also get the opportunity to get these little surprise blue and red gems, which are going to have more points underneath them. So the scoring dynamic is like quite interesting for such a simple card game, and that idea of like changing the scoring dynamic and then everybody having the opportunity to play into that is another interesting thing. What I've found with this game, I really enjoy this game too. I think there's a lot more meat on the bones than you would expect from the artwork and from it being just a card game essentially. But teaching it to new players I've found a little bit tricky, because of the fact that each of the cards has like a front side and a back side that don't really relate to each other, but you can use it in either sense. So you can use it face down to change one of the decks, or you can use it face up to play down as a card, and that can be a little bit confusing.
Yeah, it takes a little bit for people to wrap their hair around the values. Like, okay, so this is essentially it's a white dragon, but it can be used to manipulate the number of, in the middle, or it can be used to change the color.
Yeah. And I wish the cards were a little bit smaller. I'm not going to lie, the cards are
like
very
a big tarot size.
The artwork is beautiful, but they're a little big. But probably good for younger people though, having them that big. But I really enjoyed this game too. And it almost made my list.
Yeah. So that's Dragon Keeper's my number 8.
And my number 8 is an even small box on the small box list. It's this little card game called Odin. Now, I feel like this is getting a little bit more like traction now. People are starting to hear about this game. I keep seeing it pop up. One of our friends was like, I want this like little game. And then we were like, what is it? And he said, I don't know. You probably haven't heard of it. Just this random little game called Odin. And we're like, yeah, that's a great game. We have that game. But Odin crossed our paths when we were at PlayCon, which was a Sydney convention. And at PlayCon, someone purchased it and played it with us. And I was like, that game was quite good. And so I bought a copy. And the more I play it, the more I really appreciate this, because it's so quick to get to the table, and it's a shedding game. And I don't normally love shedding games as much as I love trick-taking games. Maggie loves shedding games. But this one I find quite compelling, because essentially you have a card of these a hand of these beautifully illustrated cards that have Vikings on them, and they simply are of a particular suit and a particular number. And what's going to happen is the first player is going to play down one card with a single digit on it, so it might be like a 5, and then the next player can play the same number of cards. So I could play one card, or I could play one more, so one card or two cards, but it has to be higher in numerical value. So if I play one card down, it would have to be at least a 6 to beat the 5, but I could play two cards down, so for example a 6 and a 1, and that would be 61. And then the other compelling part about this is, couple of rules about putting cards down is they have to be the same number or the same suit. So that 61 both cards have to be the same suit. But then the other weird thing about this game is you have to pick a card back up off the table. So if I play the 61 after the 5 was played, I'm picking up that 5 and putting it into my hand. And the next player who's going to play a card down is going to choose between my 6 and the 1 and have to bring it into their hand. And that's complex, because all of a sudden you have to pick up some rubbish that doesn't go with anything in your hand. It's not the same suit and it's not the same number. And towards the end of a round, that is particularly problematic, because you might pick up a card that's just all by itself. So suddenly you have one card in your hand that you need to play by winning, a round so that you can play that one card. So it's just a little interesting dynamic. It's that element of it can feel a little bit like random luck a little bit because it depends on what another player is going to play, but it's just fun, and shedding games are like that. And I don't know, I just have found that it's really easy to get to the table, and obviously it's so tiny, so you can just carry it on you.
Better at higher player counts, you'd say?
Better at higher player counts, yeah. Some of our friends were like, we've only played it at 2. I was like, I think it shines because there's more there's more cards.
The higher player counts,
all shedding games, that is usually true, and trick-taking games. So that is my number 8, Odin.
Now my number 7 is a game called Stone Spine Architects, which is all about being architects of different dungeons. So we're all going to be creating our own dungeon. This is in the same world as the role player and like cartographers type universe. So some of that, the settings and the artwork might feel familiar. But essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be constructing this grid, this 4x4 grid of different cards that represent the different chambers of our dungeon. Now the way we're going to be doing this is through drafting. So we're going to start with like a set hand of cards, passing it around, and then just
Sushi Go style.
Yeah, so picking one and kind of going, oh, these are all great, but I know that I'm going to give them to my opponent. And then we're also going to have particular objectives that are unique to our dungeon. So particular things that we want to meet in our dungeon. So particular, it could be traps or monsters or different kind of combinations of things that will appear in the different dungeons, or even locations. Like we want to have a trap in this particular chamber over here, or even the type of construction. So the materials like stone or like dirt type thing. So then the other thing that will happen is after we go through a round, we're going to have a kind of purchasing phase. So at the end of each round, we actually going to get the chance to, we will have generated some money along the way, and then we're going to be able to purchase some additional elements that will help us get our dungeon to meet the conditions that we want. There's also usually going to be another objective
I love
for
that
the end.
Shopping round.
Yeah, kind of going, ooh, what will I get? So the interesting thing about this as well is as you're spending money, we're sort of taking turns to spend that money. The first person who decides I'm done spending, any money that you don't spend is wasted. So that's where you're like, oh, I kind of don't want to waste the money. But the first person who, or in that order, you actually get to then have first pick of other endgame objectives that are going to be unique to you. So then there's that tension.
Be worth so many points that it's like, should I pick up another trap or should I just go for that, that endgame condition?
So that's another interesting thing where like as the game is progressing, 2 things are happening. One, you start out with this like world of possibilities going, oh, I'm going to create this dungeon. And then as the rounds go over, you're like, I need to give up on my dreams. This is not happening and that's not happening and I can't see that card ever coming around. And so, or then you're looking at that market going, please, 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 I need one of these things to come up into the market. But then you also have that evolution of those objectives that then you're also getting to go, oh, maybe I can pivot because I seem to have a lot of these things. And then there's also the other scoring that always gets me because you're trying to also get the path from the entrance to of the dungeon all the way to the exit, and then there's also points for how many different chambers you manage to connect. So there's all these different layers of puzzle, and even though that's happening, the gameplay itself is quite relaxing because you're just like, oh yeah, picking a card and doing this and then going, ooh yeah. So I just enjoy that combination of satisfying analysis.
Yeah, and we did a run through on Rado's channel for this game. I'm pretty sure I lost, but
I can't remember.
Because I always lose when we do a live playthrough. But in general, I find this, like, I like this game and I can completely see why Maggie likes the game, but I find myself mathing it out a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, of course I'll pick this card out of my hand because it's like the most amount of points for me in this particular moment. And so for that reason, it's like, I don't know, it's like the theme doesn't come through for me at all. Like it's just like I'm summing the number of things.
See, I'm not as good at that mapping out. So to me, it's always a surprise of like, oh, that came together. Or like, look at those points that I managed to do. It's like, so you could map it out.
There's a few games like that where I'm like, oh, well, I could go shopping. But
like beautiful mindset.
Actually, that objective, like I'd be stupid not to just take that objective. And so for me, it just like makes it a little less fun because I'm just like doing the sums.
I'm just like,
You're just like, I'm having the best time in this dungeon.
So Any other thoughts?
Nothing else to add.
So that is Stone Spine Architects, my number 7.
Okay, now my number 7 is the first crossover, and it's higher on Maggie's list, so I'll let her talk about it a little bit later. So we'll move straight into Maggie's number 6, but actually, that happens to be my number 6 as well.
Appropriate, because it is
the 6 of 8.
So this game...
The 6 is in the title.
It is! Yeah, it's like it was meant to be, number 6. Well, so in the 6 of 8, we are going to be... The theme is all around the 6 wives of Henry VIII. And this is a trick-taking game, which, you know, it's... I'm very surprised at how designers manage to bring in so much theme these days into a mechanic that is
so
abstract.
I love it though.
Yeah, so this is Carol Legros, the designer, and this is so clever because the way this works is there's going to be 6 suits. And each suit represents one of the different queens. Now, not only, so the suits are also different sizes. So there's different number of cards in each suit, which again is sort of representing the length of the reign of different queens. Another layer to that is
their lives.
Yeah, some of them is their life. But it's also, because it's not necessarily like, you know, who's the eldest. It's like who got to be queen for
the longest.
For different reasons.
Yeah.
So the other layer that's going to be happening is that every round, or every hand, there's going to be a marker that's going to be moving along, shifting the trump, what will dictate to be the trump suit. The trump suit again is going to be based on the order of that is based on the order of the reign of the different queens and the length as well. So the other interesting thing about this is that it's a game that's played in pairs.
Yeah, and so you're going to be sitting on the opposite side of the table to your teammate, and the other interesting thing is you're going to be able to swap 2 cards with your teammate before we start a new round. And so of course you're trying to plan together to win as many tricks, but it's not necessarily winning tricks because there are cards and only certain numbered cards that have diamonds on them, and those are going to be the points in this game, not the number of tricks themselves. And so that's really interesting. Of course, this dynamic trump is so interesting because it's every hand that you play, every card that you play or hand is going to be, every trick that's played is going to have a different trump depending on which queen was reigning at that time.
Yeah. There's also going to be additional cards. So that's sort of like the base game. And then you can kind of level it up with, there's these like spy cards that essentially can act as 2 different suits. And with one of the suits, they're a 0. And with the other suit, they're like each the 13. So it's like the highest sort of value. And then there's also a king card that you can kind of introduce.
I like that thematically the king takes on the suit of the reigning queen.
Yeah, exactly. I'm all up for this one at the moment. It's like, oh, yeah. And then there's also a Church of England card that allows you to annul or nullify a trick once it's been won. So if you're like, no, I will not have that. So it's usually it becomes a version of a catch-up mechanic, because usually it's going to be the team that is running, that is sort of behind, that will have access to that card.
Yeah, so this is a great thematic trick-taking game, especially if you understand the history of Henry VIII and the wives. So yeah, it's just so fantastically thematic, but of course it's a little bit harder to get to the table because you do really need exactly 4 players. There's a 3-player variant, but that involves someone having to control a random
never
hand.
The same.
It's never the same. And so you really want 4 players so that you can play on teams. But yeah, fantastic trick-taking game. This is our joint number 6, the 6th of 8.
Now, my number 5 is higher on Amy's list.
And my number 5 is higher on Maggie's list.
Which is coming in right now. And it's my number 4, which is the game.
So it's my number 5 and Maggie's number 4.
Where is it? I've misplaced it. So.
What you can't see is that there's piles of games everywhere around us.
It's Castle Combo. So Castle Combo is this really charming little card game, which again, we have a lot of grid making games.
I was going to make a comment about that.
What is going Yeah, it's only just
like
realized,
lots
like,
of,
that's
it's
a
a
lot.
3x3, it's a 4x4.
Yeah,
There's lots
it's
of,
been a great kind of year
tableau
for us.
kind of, yeah.
So in this one, we are going to be constructing, a 3x3 grid by purchasing cards, which represent different characters from a central market. Now, with this central market, it's got two areas. It's got the sort of the royal row, which are going to be like different sort of suits that represent more
From
of
the palace?
Yeah, from the palace. Yeah, and then it's got the village, which are the more kind of your humble, the peasants and the everyday kind of workers. Yeah. And so you're going to be, we're going to have the two elements that you're going to be using is coins to purchase cards and also keys. So keys will allow you to do a few different things, but they're also worth points at the end. Now, you also have this pawn that's sort of moving between the two rows. And so when it comes to your turn, you have to draw, you have to purchase cards from the row where that pawn is. You can spend keys to move it to the other row.
Just one key.
Just one key, pretty cheap. Yeah, just 1 point. You're foregoing a point. Now, the interesting thing with these cards is they all really essentially have different. Well, one, they'll usually have an immediate bonus of some sort, of some kind. Some of them is going to be like giving you money or keys or other things, but or discounts, ongoing discounts, which was one of the good things for different card
great.
types
I love a discount.
going forward. Yeah, and then they all will have an end game kind of bonus or point condition as well, which a lot of the times will be working off of synergies of some of the other cards, or they might not want to have a particular other type of a symbol or kind of suit present in your grid, or they might want more of them in the same color in the same row. So it's just this sort of combination of different synergies that you're going for.
Yeah, the other thing that the cards do, if you purchase the cards, sometimes they will move that pawn marker to the other row automatically. So the next player then is choosing from the opposite row to you. This game came out late in the year. So we actually played a version of it before Pandasaurus had released its version. The previous version was available in Europe, I think, and Pandasaurus has now picked it up, so it's going to get wider distribution, but it's really only just hit shelves here in Australia, and it is a fantastic filler. Like, I really rate this game in terms of just being accessible and satisfying. It is both of those things. It plays really quickly because all you're doing is really drafting 9 cards, but the way that they puzzle together is always compelling. It's just, there's something about it that is really interesting, and managing that economy of coins and keys, because if you don't have enough coins to purchase any of the cards that are available in the market, you have to take distress action, which is going to give you 6 coins, but then you're placing a card face down in your tableau and it won't score at the end of the game for you. And so there's just enough like flavor and intrigue, and then there's also a really thematic tie-in between what the cards are giving you in terms of a benefit or what they want for the end game and their character.
I love that, because it's like you start kind of reading, in between and going, oh yeah, okay, I can see how this character wouldn't want those other professions or symbols around. I think there's like the philosopher is not into like
doesn't want any military
or like
presence,
there's so it's like it's like, and it's one of those games that it didn't need to do that, because it could have just been symbols and that's it, but it's just going that extra layer and that extra miles. I really appreciate it. And there's even like a little kind of hidden scandal in there if you're looking for like, oh, wait a second, what's happening there?
We won't add a spoiler in there, but you might be able to work it out if you play this game. But the artwork is absolutely
really cool.
top notch as well. It's just like the characterization is beautiful and it looks great on the table, and it's just fast and it's so easy to teach. And so for all those reasons, the more we play this, the more we played it, the higher it became on our rank, even though it was, it hasn't been on our table for that long. So I just think a lot of people are going to get a lot of joy out of this game. This is my number 5 and Maggie's number 4. Castle Combo. Now, if you think we were excited about that title, well, that's because we're even more excited about the games that are higher in our list. So the ones from like 5 up for me are just like no-brainers. I want to have these games in my collection. So, and I love all the other games too, but it just gets, this is why I'm so excited about this year's small box, because of these games. So Castle Combo was great, but my number 4 is Things in Rings. Now, the first time I played this game, I just loved it, but if you don't know, we don't do this full time. My full-time job is as a quantitative analyst, and so a Venn diagram is right in the heartland of things I enjoy. Things I enjoy. You can put them in a Venn diagram.
The things in your rings, yes.
Things in rings. And this game is a deduction game, which is also not commonly, a mechanic that we really love. But this game is one of those games where you're like, oh, why wasn't this done before? This is by Australian designer Peter C. Haywood. And what it is a Venn diagram is set up on the table, and there is a knower. Now, the knower knows what each of the... We're not going to do the poem on the back, not again. We memorized it for the review.
We did. Yeah.
What the knower knows is that each of the rings has a particular condition. So it might be like, one of them might be things that fly, and another one might be it has a double letter in it. And so what everybody else is going to be doing is they're going to be placing cards from a hand of cards that they have that have things represented on them. So just different everyday objects that are going to, and sometimes not every day, because I was just thinking about the fantasy pack.
Some fantastical things,
and they're going to be placed out in one of the rings. So you either think that the card or the thing matches one of the conditions of one of the rings, or that it matches more than one, in which case you put it in the little overlapping parts of the ring. So maybe I think there's 2 rings that this meets, so I put it between those 2. Or maybe it's all 3, so I put it right in the center in the overlapping of 3. So I love that I have to explain what a Venn diagram is.
This is how a Venn works.
Everyone knows how a Venn diagram works, but what you're trying to do is actually, this is it's deduction, but it's a shedding game.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to be the first person to... This is the second shedding game on my
your
list. I'm just realizing this, and I'm like, I don't really like shedders.
And I'm the one that
second
likes
shedding game. You're trying to get rid of all of your cards, and you do that because when you get something right, the knower's going to be like, "Yep, you nailed it," and you get to place another card. And if you keep doing that, you're going to be able to get rid of all your cards. If you get it wrong, the knower is going to move that card to its rightful position, and then you're going to have to draw another card, meaning that you didn't get rid of any cards on that turn, and it goes to the next player. And so, the game continues, and there's a few interesting elements of this game, but one is that the longer you play, or the deeper you get into the game, and the more people start to get things even wrong, because the knower's moving them into the right position, or they get it right, and people are starting to realize what the things are, you get more information because you're like, okay, now I understand that all of the things in this area they have something in common.
Yeah.
And they are different to the things that are everywhere else. So you're trying to work out what the rule is. And then once you can get those rules, obviously then placing the cards becomes really easy. I
feel like it never really feels easy. It's usually like, because even sometimes when people are like, I did it, I got rid of all my cards, it's like, do you know what they are? Not really. And then you kind of try and have a guess, and it's like, is it this? It's like, actually, kinda. It's
and it's a fantastic party game. And the reason why I like this game so much is 2 reasons outside the Venn thing. One is that if people aren't playing, they can still be hanging around.
Yeah.
And this happens all the time when we get this out on the table at a con or something, is that people start like just lingering and looking and trying to work out the rules for themselves. And it doesn't matter that they're not playing, because they're like, this is really hard. What do those things have in common?
Yeah.
And the second thing is that playing as the knower is really fun.
It's probably the most fun role in the whole...
I like both, like guessing and being the knower.
Yeah.
But people do love being the knower.
Yeah.
So they've got because they have the responsibility of categorizing every item, and some of them it's not clear.
Yeah, it's a bit ambiguous.
It can be ambiguous, and so you have to make up a consistency rule for yourself that, these edge cases, I'm going to say that they're all no, then none of them belong under that rule. And so at the end, what's always really funny is we reveal the rules, or the person who wins gets the opportunity to say what all of the rules are, but the knower then gets attacked by all the other players.
It's like, this was this. I'm like, what? So why is that there? Why did you put it there? Yeah.
And then they have to rationalize why they put it there. And so it just always leads to a lot of laughter. A really great game in it. A really, compact box, but there's a lot of different rules. There's a lot of different thing cards. Yeah.
And difficulty levels, like complexity.
Yes,
that
and they do get really hard.
Change the nature of the game.
Yeah, and so this is the type of game that you never play one round. You play one round, and they're like again.
Yeah.
So that is we're up to my number 4, things in rings.
Now my number 3, which is actually Amy's number 7, is the game Fromage. So this is another game that came. It was a kind of like a later experience in the year. But as soon as we kind of started playing it, we're like, this is the thing with this. It's like it doesn't. When you first start, you're like, this seems almost too simple. You have this big, very cool, big wheel of cheese with 4 wedges. And each one of those wedges is going to be like the side, the wedge that's facing each player. Yeah, and so each one of those wedges is going to have its own scoring.
Puzzle.
It's almost like its own puzzle.
Yeah,
and like its own kind of mini game in a way. And then so when you kind of learn it, you're like, okay, that seems pretty straightforward. But the interesting thing of this is like you're only really interacting with your wedge during your turn, and then there's also this sort of like in the middle these resources that are allowing you to get different elements to bring into your own fromagerie, which also will have different things that you can kind of evolve or level up in terms of the things you're going to be able to do. Now, when you're placing things, your workers, which has a sort of like really cool little cheese wedge little workers. As you're placing them, you have different ways that they could be placed, which will determine how many, because that wheel is going to be turning, how many turns of that wheel it'll take before you're able to get that worker back. And so when I first was sort of reading the rules, I was like, this almost looks like it's going to be too simple. And I did not anticipate how satisfying that element of going, oh, yeah, oh, and this one's now coming back. It's like, it started feeling like this sort of little, like almost like an assembly line of going, okay, yes, and now it's, now I'm cooking. And and then obviously, the longer you're leaving a worker in place, the more powerful that action becomes. So there's always that sort of balance. So it was one of those that is like, I didn't think it would.
That's interesting. I had the reverse feeling about this game because it's been on our most anticipated for so long. And when the Kickstarter was out, we talked about it a lot, and I was really excited about it. But I was actually in the back of my mind, I was a bit worried it was going to be too light because the publisher of this game also did Canva or Canvas.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Which is a game that I love because of the transparency of the cards, but I find a little bit too light.
Yes.
You love it, but a little bit too light for my taste.
It was more on the lighter side in terms of like that strategy.
Yeah, and so when I got into this game, I was just delighted by the balance here of accessibility and satisfaction again. That's the thing. I don't mind like a light game as long as it's got some element that's really satisfying. And the satisfying element is exactly what Maggie described. It's those workers and the timing of them coming back to you. And I really like that is achieved simply by the direction in which the worker faces. And when you can see the worker's face staring back at you, you know that it's time to bring those workers back. And that just means that you don't have to remember when things are coming back to you at the start of your turn. Everyone that's facing you, you can pull them back. And that is just, it's so elegant. I really love that. And also it's a constant trade-off of quick wins, things that are going to bring your workers back really quickly and maybe give you lower scoring points versus high points, but you're not going to get that worker back. And so there's also like these cheese cards that are like a bonus points if you're able to achieve them by making achieve them. By making that particular type of cheese. And I really like that because that gives you even more motivation to do different things, especially if it's like, well, that's going to take longer to make, but it helps me achieve a card that I really want to achieve. And then there's also, like as Maggie mentioned, there's a bit of dynamic way of variability in terms of setup, in terms of the things that you can unlock with the sheds that you can build. I think they're called sheds.
So like essentially the different options on your own kind of personal board. So that sort of brings in a bit of also asymmetry and a lot of variability potentially in terms of those like not only just almost like like abilities as well, or discounts, or mini goals that you individually would be striving to, could influence your strategy.
And production-wise, it is stunning.
Yeah.
It's stunning, and the way that they've made it so that the board can turn on a mat with just a circle in the center is really great. And then the way that you insert the puzzle boards depending on your player count, and that's the only like scaling that you need to do. It's fantastic. I just think that it's super clever.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this. It's a game that you can easily bring to the table, and it doesn't matter if it's a bit light for some gamers. Everyone's going to appreciate that, like,
it's just satisfying.
Dynamic.
Yeah, it's just like that little, that sort of, putting them in and turning them around and going, they get to come back in. And like, I just found that, I was surprised at how satisfying I found that sort of little engine to be. So that is Fromage, my number 3, and Amy's number 7.
And now my number 3 is a game that, I'm telling you, ranking these top ones was so hard because I just love this game so much. Maggie hates it.
This is not for me. This is not one for me.
This game is Lone Wolves, which is a 2-player only trick-taking game. I said earlier in this video that you rarely get, trick-taking games that are lower player count, or the best ones a higher player count. This is an exception to the rule. I love this game.
Oh, yeah,
this game is slightly, I would say, very head-to-head style.
Slightly. It's entirely head-to-head, which is why I dislike my experience of playing it.
But essentially what you're doing is, in the center you have a board that folds out of this box that has each of the suits represented. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be playing a card each, so just one trick, behind one of those areas of the board, well, the suit areas, the locations. And the person who wins the trick, and that's just based on value of the card of the lead suit, is going to be able to keep their card face up in that territory or area. And that is going to contribute to an area majority kind of scoring at the end of the game. Now, the other player who lost is going to turn over their card, and it becomes a lone wolf, hence the title, which is only worth 1 point in the area where they've played that card, because they can be played in different areas. But importantly, when you lose a trick, you're allowed to take a scar token from that territory. And a scar token is going to give you some kind of other scoring condition or allow you to mess with the game. And they're very powerful. And so the whole thing about this game is you are trying to work out when you need to win and when you need to lose. Obviously, you want to win a lot because then you keep control of the lead suit, which is going to help you win more. But that means that the other player is getting the opportunity to pick up all these scar tokens, which can even boost their strength in a territory for that area majority game. So that's really interesting. The other interesting thing is that there is an evolving trump. So at the beginning of the game, there's no trump. But then once a player has removed all of the scar tokens from a territory, that territory and the suit it represents tells players that now this is the trump suit. So there's a really interesting subtle dynamic here that you want to lose a lot in order to manipulate what the trump suit is, so then you can win a lot in the later tricks in the game. So there's so much to think about. And it's just so late. I can't even I'm so excited to talk about this game, and I love teaching people. Yes, it's not going to be for everyone. It's not for Maggie, because it is very head-to-head confrontational, and you're constantly like, ha, now I've taken back that territory. The other thing that I didn't mention as well is that each territory can only hold 6 cards. So once you've won that territory with 4 or 5 cards, the other player, there's nothing they can play on their side to win that territory. It's like, okay, well, I'm kind of going to give up on that and work on something else. And that evolving trump, which happens twice in the game, is also really interesting because it means that when you're losing, there's always a way to come back. I cannot recommend this more if you like trick-taking and you want to have a great trick-taking experience for 2 players.
Head-to-head. That is very head-to-head. Yes.
Head-to-head.
Yeah.
But the fun dynamic about this game as well is that I found in teaching this game, the first game I almost certainly destroy the opponent. And that's really bad etiquette when you're teaching a game, by the way. But, for a new player, they're not going to probably win against an experienced player. But by the second game, that player is either beating me or close to it.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those games that has a really quick upskilling.
You need to like wrap your head around and go, oh, okay.
Once you've got your head around it,
yeah.
once you've played it once and it makes sense, then it's going to be like a really tight race. So yeah, really enjoy this game. It is my number 3 small box game of the year, Lone Wolves.
Now, after my number 2, which actually is both of our number 2, that is
I love this game.
Fairy Ring. This is an excellent little game where we are going to be constructing a field of different mushrooms that will, as we're playing those mushrooms, is going to move our little fairy who's going to be jumping from mushroom to mushroom through our mushrooms and then all of our opponents' mushroom gardens. The cool thing about this is as the fairy's kind of jumping along, the mushroom that they land in will be activated. So for example, if mine lands on Amy's garden, Amy will get to generate points for that mushroom. All the different mushrooms have different kind of scoring conditions or ways that they score points. Some of them might be just for people actually just going past them, like the spring. Some of them might be for like the height of like how many mushrooms it has or how the total number of mushrooms. So there's all these different combinations. So it'll score for Amy if it was in Amy's garden. But if I have the same type of mushroom, then it'll also score for me. So I'd have to kind of allocate, go, oh yeah, if I know that, you know, if it were to have activated my own, this is how, this is how many points I would have gotten. So it's an interesting thing of going, there's a little bit of kind of positive interaction, but you're also being very calculated in going, okay, which of the mushrooms am I going to play? One, because of the steps that it's going to be taking. Knowing that sometimes you don't know, particularly if you're playing, one of the later turns, other people, as they're building their mushroom, they're adding additional steps. So I might be playing a 4, but all of a sudden the neighbor to my left added some more mushrooms, and now it means that I'm not going to land on the mushroom that I was hoping for.
So you need to think about turn order.
Yeah, so you need to think about turn order. You need to think about the how many steps it's going to go, but then also, does this make sense as the mushroom that I want to start or continue to plant in my garden?
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that it's also a Sushi Go style draft again, where you are picking a mushroom and you're placing it down, face down until everyone picks them, and then we're playing it out in turn order. And I think the other dynamic of this game that I really love is that when you play a mushroom of the same type that you already have into your garden, you have 2 choices. You can make the existing mushroom that you have more powerful by making it taller, or you can spread out and add it as another mushroom in your garden, which effectively makes your garden wider. So do you want to have a smaller garden with really tall mushrooms that every time someone lands on those, they're going to give you so many points?
Or every time you activate it in someone else's garden, you're going to get a lot of points.
Yeah, a lot of points. Or do you want to create this sprawling garden that nobody can avoid?
It's just like weeds. People are going, it's going to take forever to get through Amy's garden now. Yeah.
Which is hilarious, because people are always trying to calculate to skip past your garden and get back to theirs so that they activate their mushroom and nobody else's, because obviously that's the best way to win the game. So you make this really sprawling one and people are like, oh, now I'm going to travel through and like activate all your mushrooms along the way. So I really love that dynamic about it as well. There is a slightly more advanced version, which isn't really that much more advanced, where you have 3 tokens each, and there's some scoring objectives which you can all achieve throughout the course of the game, and they relate to the number of mushrooms that you have in your garden, how tall they are, the number of fireflies that are showing, which is a really cool little twist as well. And when you do that, the other thing that we didn't talk about is the really weird scoring in this, where you're collecting mana. So that's going to be kind of what you're doing when people land on the mushrooms and whatever. And then you are exchanging that mana for points every time you get 20.
Yeah.
And so the number of points you have is secret information. And so you never quite know who's in the lead right until the end. I mean, you have a fair idea when someone's getting something activated all the time. You're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, turning into a point, converting to a point. Because you're converting, I think it's like 20 mana to a point. Yeah, it's just this is a delight. The production is a delight. And then, again, it's another game where it's satisfying. It's very easy to teach. And there's no downtime, like heavy downtime, because you're all kind of picking simultaneously, and then even though you're kind of taking your turns, there's also that anticipation of like, are they going to land on my
just the
garden?
fairies jumping around everybody's tableau. I just love that as a concept. We're gifting this to a lot of people for Christmas this year.
We've bought many copies.
Many copies. But yeah, I don't know. We keep talking about it on the channel, and it hasn't really picked up that much steam. But I don't know why, because it's so good.
It's great. I think it's just gone under the radar. But I think as people start to play, it's like, this is great, because again, people that we played it with are like, I'm gonna get a copy. Like that was just so fun. So.
It's just so unusual, and thematically, there's the mycelia.
Underneath that runs underneath.
Where connecting all the mushrooms. So
which just makes perfect sense. Why you're activating over there, and it's sort of feeding me as well. So,
So number 2
for
small box family game of the year is Fairy Ring.
And now for my number one. And this might come as a surprise because I don't think I've talked a lot about this.
Yeah, I don't think you have either,
I think there hasn't been a lot of opportunities. Like people that know me know how much this game just took me.
Tell them what it is.
What is it? It's capybaras. So it's these, which again, so this is by Roberta Taylor, who was the designer, or is the designer, of Creature Comforts, Maple Valley, and now capybaras. Now, capybaras is probably the simplest and most streamlined of all, not probably, definitely, of all of these 3 games. But it's just so satisfying, and the theme, oh my god, is the best. You're different capybaras running cafes.
So cozy.
This is the embodiment of coziness. So what you're doing is you're a capybara, and there's this super cute different characters, all with super fun little punny names, and you're going to be trying to build up your cafe. And the way you're going to do that is you have all these different cards that represent different types of things that you could serve in your cafe. So almost like the equipment and things that you're going to be able to build. So on your turn, you start with a hand of 4 cards. You either will play a card and pay for the cost of that card to add it to your cafe. So it might be like, oh, now I can actually serve hot drinks, or I can serve snacks or sweets or whatever it is. Or the other way that you can do it is you could play a card to serve. So the cards are kind of multi-use cards. So they can also be at the bottom. They have, if you're playing it as a customer, it tells you what is it that this customer is after. So it's usually going to be a combination of different types of food or drink, and then there's also going to be a decor type that is their preferred decor, which is one of the other types of cards that you can purchase. Essentially, it's like purchasing upgrades, enhancing your cafe. Obviously, all of those things cost money, and money is so tight in this game, because when you do manage to serve customers, you're only really getting 1 coin per item that you manage to serve, unless you have a customer who loves, so they have the little heart for a particular item, which means that if you have, for example, say it's hot drinks, and if I'm able to produce 3 hot drinks, then they'll buy all of my hot drinks. So I'll get to, for that 1 item, I'll get 3 coin. If you manage to be able to serve all of the things that a particular customer is wanting, because usually you might be able to just give them, serve one of the things that they're after. But if you meet all of their requirements and you have the right decor, they become a loyal customer, like you're regular now. And so that's going to then be obviously additional points at the end, but it's also going to be the thing that will trigger end of game. So it's usually 3 or 4 loyal customers, like as soon as a player reaches that, depending on player count, that's what does the variation. That ends the game. So it's just super simple, because all you're really doing is you have that central market of those cards, and you're like, oh yeah, and you also have some kind of collective objectives, where again, it's not really a race. Anyone who has met those objectives by the end will be able to claim the points for them, but they're also super thematic. So I think, now I can't remember off the top of my head, there's like the napper, I think, is like the one that likes naps, and so the requirement is to have at least 2 chairs in your cafe, because it's like putting the chairs together and having a nap. And then there's like the writer, and so the writer wants to have like just tons of coffee and a cookie, I think. And so it's just, they're just simple, but just so, it's just so charming. I'm just so delighted by it. So
she was so delighted by it that she made her own solo game for this game.
Yes, because this plays 2 to 4, and I'm like, I want to play this even when no one's around, and I can't. And there's actually, and it's a fairly easy way. I haven't put it on BGG or anything like that. But it's essentially you can just flip a card and go, depending on the value of it, just remove the equivalent sort of number card from the.
You should put it on BGG.
Market.
I think people would like it.
I'll
And
put it on BGG.
you know, this game is.
But I think actually I should say there is an official solo mode that's being developed.
Yes.
So that's why I was like, oh yeah, well I'll post this one because it's just a very easy way of just getting to play and explore the game and just, yeah, it's just this is the embodiment of like a cozy and just cards and simple. It's not like a million bits and components and things. It's just like very easy to sort of start. But it's the tension of the money. Like even like big like heavy gamers are like, why is this so tight? Like, why I'm so struggling to get the money on it. Yeah.
And I think the reason why, because it's like we have very different lists. I think we've got like 4 crossovers or something in this list. But Maggie's number 1 not being on my list is quite unusual. So I just want to talk about that. You know, I think it is a gorgeous production. It's one of my favorite in that kind of series of games, if not the favorite.
Yeah.
It is, like I do like the tightness. It's just a little slow to get up and running. Like, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's just I'm impatient when it comes to gaming, and when it's a more cozy, relaxed experience, I tend to get a bit like, when can I get some points? Like, like I want to build up that engine a little bit faster. So it is more of a relaxed pace, even if there's tension around the money.
Money.
It is more chill, which is why it is well suited, I think, to a solo game as well.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, doing your thing, putting your cafe together. Yeah. But super cute.
Yeah. Oh, so cute. So so that's my number 1 Cafe Paris.
Okay, so we're on to my number 1, and I love this game so much. It is, I feel like
it's probably not going to be a huge surprise.
Oh, I don't think it's going to be a huge surprise. And it's Maggie's number 5, which I kept being like, why is it so low? It's so good. The other thing I'll say about this game, before I say what it is that I think it might actually be my game of the year. So we do have a big box Euro list that will be launching, within the next week or so. But this game, which is Harmonies,
we don't have the
box.
Where's the box, Amy?
One. The box is at my work because I play this at every opportunity. I love teaching it to new people. I feel like my colleagues are probably like, oh, Harmonies again. But, but they know. They always have a lot of fun playing it. And that is the reason why this game is my number 1. When we first played it, I was like, there's something about that game that really works my brain in a way that I enjoy. But then the thing I love about this game is that the puzzle itself, you can be as hard on yourself about it as you want to be, or you can take it for what it is and just make trees and put
leave it at a very sort of basic level.
And so for that reason it reminds me a bit of Calico, because Calico is like, well, you can either like take it easy breezy, or you can be like, I need to get every objective done. And so I'm in the latter camp when I play Harmonies, because the way that the puzzle works is there are simple, you're essentially drafting Azul style, a set of pieces that are going to go onto your board or your habitat area. And you are trying to create different habitats or zones that are going to attract particular animals to that habitat. But at its base level, when you're putting those pieces together, they represent mountains, and you can build bigger mountains or smaller mountains. But the trick with mountains is that they always have to be part of a mountain range. Or you can be building just simple trees, so that have like wood components and then greenery at the top. And the different level or height of those trees is going to give you more or less points. So that's kind of, or there's like a river, and you just want to make as long of a river as possible. So there's like a base level game that is interesting and satisfying enough. Make those things. But the habitats for the animals is the interlocking puzzle that makes it really interesting, because you decide if you want to draft one of these cards, and you can have a maximum of 4 above your board. And when you make a certain combination of components on your board, you're able to place out these cubes on top to represent the animal that wants to live there. And those are going to be worth points at the end of the game. But the interesting thing is, where can you find the synergies in the animals and where that cube gets placed on your puzzle, because you can only have 1 cube on top of one thing. So are you building a tree that is going to be where one animal is going to live, but also contribute to the habitat that another animal wants, even though they're not going to sit on top of that tree? So it's all about looking at what cards are available, working out that interaction, and then, you've got this randomness of the groups of things that you're going to take, and you've got to make the best of what's available. So, I don't know. This game, it's so easy to teach. I love teaching this game, so much so that every time we go to a convention and the distributor in Australia is there, I'm loitering around the demo tables in case someone wants to teach. Like, I would just like, oh, sorry, would you like to? And they're probably like, no,
It's like
thank you.
with someone doing an official demo. It's like,
No, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't. They have tables.
Usually at the start of before people have arrived, which is when like Amy's like, I'll teach it.
Or even at a convention, if someone has the game, like, do you know how to play that? I'll teach you. And they're like, no, we're fine. Please back away.
Please
lady.
leave. Yeah.
Please leave us alone. But I love teaching this game, and I think that it's just brought a lot of joy to a lot of people who love those puzzly experiences.
Yeah. I love how thematic it actually is, because it's really an abstract little game, but then when you look at the way the different terrains kind of come together, makes sense, the way the scoring happens, and particularly the animals, the type of terrain that the animals want, and even where the animal kind of representing cube is going to be placed, makes sense based on the animal, and the production itself is really beautiful. I love the artwork of the in the cards, the actual little wooden tokens for the different kind of terrains is really satisfying and tactile to kind of be able to kind of play with, and just it's just so effective.
Yeah, and some people didn't like the thinness of the cards, or that they went curly, but they're all made sustainably, which I think matters for a game that's about animal habitat. So,
and you're not really, it's not like you're shuffling using the cards. It's really, they're just there sort of sitting for the
So what more can I say other than I love this game. I keep buying this game for people as well. It's a game that will...
It's another one that, we've bought many
copies. It will stay in our collection forevermore. It is a fantastic
Even
game.
though we don't have it right now because it's at work.
Well, maybe I need to buy a second copy.
Oh, no. Why did I
one at
even
work.
plant this idea? I see the error of my ways. It was in real time going, what have I done?
Anyway, it is my number one small box family game of the year. It is Harmonies, and we hope you enjoyed this list. And as I mentioned, we only had 4 games in common, so 6 games that were uniquely on only mine or Maggie's list. Whose list
gonna make it a competition?
Fit more with what you enjoyed in 2024, because there was such a great variety of Lightbox games. In fact, I feel like the heavier games were all kind of coming out at the end of the year, and the rest of the year was really just a delight for anyone who is looking for more accessible titles. If you did enjoy this video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content, including our top 10 Euro heavy games of the year really soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.